It's the greatest aviation mystery of all time.
The disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 on March 8, 2014 remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of our time. Just hearing about it can send chills down your spine. You surely remember how it happened. Flight MH370 took off on its Kuala Lumpur-Beijing route and disappeared from radar just 40 minutes after takeoff. The fate of 239 people remains labeled as missing to this day. A massive plane seemed to dissolve into thin air, and for 10 years now, authorities have been desperately trying to uncover the truth, scouring the depths of the ocean and re-examining every piece of evidence. Yet, although no official recognition of the fragments have been found, their efforts have not been in vain. This shocking and tragic event continues to grip us with tension and anxiety. You are on the Top Facts channel, and on this episode, we're dedicating it to the new details of the Malaysian Boeing tragedy. What if the answers we seek are hidden among recent discoveries and hypotheses from independent experts? Perhaps today they'll shed light on the mysterious secrets of Flight MH370. Join us and let's start the video. I'll give you a little background. Malaysia Airlines' regular international flight followed a standard route between the capitals of Malaysia and China, with passengers from both countries and transit travelers. On that fateful evening, 227 people boarded the flight from 14 different countries: Indonesia, Australia, India, France, the US, Iran, Ukraine, Canada, New Zealand, the Netherlands, Russia, and Taiwan, along with 12 crew members, 2 pilots, and 10 staff, all Malaysians. MH370 took off after midnight, and the journey to Beijing on the night of March 7th to the 8th was supposed to take around 5.5 hours. The crew had to cover around 3,460 miles, while the passengers could relax in a comfortable modern air flyer. The flight was under the control of experienced pilots. 53-year-old Captain Zahari Ahmed Shah had 33 years of flying experience. He was one of the most senior captains at Malaysia Airlines. Following Malaysian customs, he was simply called Zahari. He was married and had 3 grown children. The first officer, 27-year-old Farik Abdul Hamid, had been in the company since 2007. This was his final training flight, after which he expected to complete his certification. They were piloting the latest model Boeing 777-200, a safe aircraft that meets the requirements of leading airlines. The Boeing was one of the most popular long-haul aircrafts used by major global airlines. The plane had served for 12 years without incidents, and everything seemed routine. Until, after taking off into the night sky, it disappeared from controller screens. At 1:07 a.m. Malaysian time, as the flight reached an altitude of 33,000 feet, the transponder automatically transmitted regular flight data, and everything appeared normal. There were no signs of malfunction on board. The last message confirmed that all systems were working normally, and the next report was expected in half an hour at 1:37 a.m. Unfortunately, it was never received at the Flight Control Center. The first alarming moment occurred around 1:19 a.m. when the plane was about to enter Vietnamese airspace. The controller in Kuala Lumpur said, "Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night." This was a routine phrase, indicating the handover of communication from one center to another. Zahari replied, "Good night, Malaysian 370. He did not repeat the frequency as required, but otherwise the message sounded standard. This was the last word heard from MH370. The pilots did not contact Ho Chi Minh and did not respond to any further attempts to reach them. Thus began a chain of fatal events, the conclusion of which remains unknown. Let's revisit the key aspects of this tragic incident. The new discoveries scientists had made recently may bring shocking news and change our understanding of this catastrophe. After all, we all want to know what really happened. Now we'll present to you with the 15 facts and hypotheses about this terrible tragedy. A simple radar, known as a primary radar, detects objects by sending out radio signals and receiving their reflections like an echo. Air Traffic Control Systems, or ATC, use what is called a secondary radar. It relies on an active transponder installed in every airplane, which sends more detailed information, such as the aircraft's identification and altitude. 5 seconds after MH370 entered Vietnamese airspace, the transponder icon disappeared from the screens of Malaysia ATC, and 37 seconds later, the plane became invisible to secondary radar. The time was 1:21 a.m., 39 minutes after takeoff. The controller in Kuala Lumpur was busy with other planes, focused on another part of the screen, and simply didn't notice the disappearance. When he eventually realized the plane was missing, he assumed that it had left radar range and was being tracked by Ho Chi Minh controllers. After the plane disappeared from radar, it astonishingly continued to periodically connect with the stationary satellite located over the Indian Ocean for the next 6 hours. The satellite is operated by the British satellite communications company Inmarsat. It's believed that during these 6 hours, the plane flew at cruising speed at high altitude, yet no one knew where it was. The fact that regular signals were being received indicates that no sudden catastrophe befell the aircraft. Communication with the satellite was possible even if the reporting systems on board were deliberately turned off, such as the passenger equipment, phone calls and internet, cockpit sensors, and automatic technical reports. If they were turned off intentionally, then all that remained of the ghost ship was a faint whisper in the form of brief electronic signals. There were a total of 7 connections, 2 of which were automatically initiated by the plane itself, and 5 were initiated by Inmarsat's ground station. Additionally, 2 attempts were made from the ground to call via satellite phone, but unfortunately, they went unanswered. However, these calls provided more detailed information about the situation as the system began recording the timeline of events. A plane like Boeing's 777 is supposed to be available for communication at all times, and its disappearance spawned a host of theories. Many of them are absurd, but they all arose because in our age, a commercial airliner simply cannot disappear. When the ATC Center's data was combined with secret data from the Malaysian Air Force, it was revealed what happened after MH370 disappeared from radar. The plane suddenly turned southwest, then altered course again, returning to airspace over the Malaysian peninsula, and after circling Penang Island, headed northwest over the Straits of Malacca. Ultimately, its trail was lost over the Andaman Sea. This portion of the flight lasted over an hour, resembling either an attempt to cover its tracks or a loss of orientation. However, the data suggests that this behavior was unlike a typical hijacking or a pilot suicide scenario. From the outset, the investigation into the MH370 yielded no helpful leads and was shrouded in a thick fog of eerie mystery. People worldwide suspected that no miraculous good news would come, but still, hope dies last. Perhaps the plane had made an emergency landing somewhere in the distant lands, or had been hijacked, but everyone survived. The very thought that a comfortable airliner of a prestigious company with modern equipment, multiple communication devices, and data backup systems could simply disappear seemed unlikely. It was as if trying to delete an email after sending it. Even if this was somehow someone's intent, completely disconnecting from the modern world is virtually impossible. Some device would still signal its presence, as happened with the satellite. The Boeing 777 is designed to maintain continuous electronic communication, so the disappearance of planes is a fantastic occurrence, leading to similarly bizarre hypotheses. Let's agree that commercial planes rarely disappear these days. Despite immediate denials from the airline and the eagerness of the Malaysian officials and the military to obscure the odd flight path of the flight, these facts leaked out and quickly spread worldwide. Now, everyone was puzzled. Why did a passenger plane have to hide and take such a strange route? In an unexpected twist of events, technical specialists in London used ultrasonic analysis methods developed by Austrian physicist Christian Doppler. The essence of these measurements is based on the relationship between the source's distance and the waves it emits. If the source catches up with its waves, the wavelength decreases. Using this radar, they managed to detect something unprecedented: the plane's exact location. This groundbreaking discovery was made thanks to Inmarsat. Specifically at 2:40 a.m., the plane, which was previously thought to be flying in a straight trajectory, surprised everyone by making a sharp turn to the south. This decisive moment occurred in Sumatra, the northernmost island of Indonesia. While some uncertainty arose during the analysis, experts believe the plane continued on its way toward Antarctica, a significant distance that goes far beyond its expected flight range. 6 hours later, Doppler radar data showed a sudden and steep descent, shockingly fast, around 5 times the normal rate of descent. The first and more accurate of the parameters is known as the synchronization offset, which we'll call for simplicity the distance parameter between the plane and the satellite. It doesn't pinpoint a single location, but identifies an entire ring of possible locations where the plane could have been. Given MH370's range, parts of these rings become arcs. The most important arc is the 7th and final one, determined by the last connection to the satellite. If communications ceased after this, it's suspected that the plane ran out of fuel and the engines failed. The 7th arc stretches from Central Asia to Antarctica, and the MH370 crossed it at 8:19 a.m. Kuala Lumpur time. Calculations of probable flight paths suggest that the plane crossed the 7th arc, and therefore, its journey could have ended in Kazakhstan if it turned north, or in the southern part of the Indian Ocean if it turned south. A minute or two after crossing the 7th arc, the plane crashed into the ocean. Due to the extreme rapid descent, it may have lost many parts before impact. Electronic evidence suggests that this wasn't a planned water landing, but a catastrophic event. The plane must have shattered into many pieces, almost instantly, but the exact crash location remains unknown. Unfortunately, there was no strong physical evidence to confirm the satellite data. Further satellite data analysis convinced experts that the plane did indeed turn south. These are very reliable and irrefutable findings. Let's take a closer look at how the distance from the plane to the satellite is measured. The frequency offset parameter. For simplicity, let's call it the Doppler parameter, since it primarily includes the measurement of radio frequency shifts, known as shift packets. If we imagine a brick, it's something like that, but in the equivalent of radio waves. We can measure how many segments separate the plane from the satellite's position. This is a natural method of satellite communication for all planes in flight, as they travel at high speeds, and tracking them via satellite is the most accurate method. To ensure uninterrupted communication, the plane's onboard systems first predict and then correct the actual frequency changes. Settings can be slightly inaccurate only if older satellites can't send signals continuously. Other factors such as the satellite's orbit inclination and temperature may also affect the data, but for now there are no more accurate parameters in modern aviation. So based on satellite information, experts learned the obvious. The plane continued to fly for several hours even after radio silence, and eventually Malaysian officials were forced to acknowledge this report. During the investigation into the Boeing's disappearance, the Malaysian government's secretive and contradictory behavior sparked suspicions, especially considering the corruption allegations that were already rife even without the incident. The situation escalated at a state level and became chaotic for investigators from foreign organizations, from Europe, Australia, and the USA. They had faced obstacles, concealed information, and the initial mistake of searching the South China Sea, wasting precious time. If the Malaysians had cooperated from the start and provided clear data, the investigation would have progressed faster and more productively. The wreckage would have pointed the way to the location of the flight records. The search for the black boxes eventually led to a remote part of the ocean. But just imagine, the ocean itself is vast, and even here mistakes can happen. It's possible to find black boxes from previous catastrophes. The search for the recorders of Air France Flight 447, which crashed into the ocean 3 hours after takeoff, took 2 years, and that was despite the plane not deviating from its course. It almost took 2 months of unsuccessful efforts before the search moved to deeper waters. The surface search under Malaysia's control officially ended April 2014. The most frustrating part is that black box batteries are designed to last for a month, and during that time, they emit signals to be found. On April 8th, exactly 1 month later, the search for the recorders was officially called off. Just imagine, this whole time they were desperately signaling, but in the wrong place, far away from the search effort. It's clear that Malaysia's ability to conduct deep searches and recover wreckage was limited. Fortunately for this, Australia offered its resources and took initiative to continue the search in the areas identified by the satellite. The extreme depth of the region and unexplored territories presented a unique challenge. Before starting the underwater search, mapping had to be conducted, and then safely sending sonar vehicles thousands of feet. But that was another hurdle. Another interesting detail suggests that this wasn't an accident, but a carefully planned situation. The unusual flight path, which went without a single electronic report, is hard to explain with common causes, such as technical issues or human error. We can summarize the causes of past disasters. Most are due to control system failures or the influence of natural events like lightning strikes and bird strikes, or, on a rare occasion, meteorites. The data obtained does not fully explain the deliberate course deviation, though. Scenarios like fire, smoke, and sudden cabin depressurization, explosions in the cargo, or pilots' inability to control the plane don't apply to this disappearance. There were also no requests for medical assistance, emergency reports, or external threats, such as bombs or military. The lack of clear causes only makes the mystery more intriguing. Not only accredited services, but also private experts and enthusiasts investigated the case. For example, Mike, an electrical engineer from Colorado, is a member of the independent group dedicated to studying all the plane's data. These people spent all their free time trying to piece together what happened based solely on technical parameters, not media reports or speculation. The group of independent experts firmly believed that during the turn, the plane ascended to an altitude of 40,000 feet, which was close to the maximum possible altitude for the flight. Such a maneuver would have subjected the passengers to severe G-forces, pushing them hard into their seats. Mike theorized that this climb was intentional and aimed at quickly depressurizing the plane, which would have led to the tragic death of all the passengers. This measure would have protected the conspirators from potential resistance during the long abnormal flight, and the consequences of depressurization would have gone unnoticed in the cabin. For emergency situation, oxygen masks are provided, but in the cabin, these masks are effective for only 15 minutes at altitudes below 13,000. At the high altitude of 40,000 feet, passengers would quickly lose consciousness without feeling suffocation or lack of air. In contrast to the cabin, the cockpit is equipped with 4 oxygen masks that provide oxygen for several hours. And if someone intentionally depressurizes the plane, they could have easily used the masks and continued to breathe safely. When the plane raced towards Penang Island, nearly 600 miles per hour, surprisingly, no one from the Air Force Base Butterworth had paid any attention to the situation, and typically planes fly along designated air routes or corridors. Continuing the investigation, Mike couldn't help but wonder about the mysterious lack of aerial attention. The defense radar and fighters could have significantly influenced the situation. A squadron of fighters always takes off at their suspicion of hijacking or pilot incapacitation. The thought of this irresponsibly haunted him. Despite suspicions that the plane's control was hijacked remotely, as though it might have been piloted from a secret location, no such fantasy had occurred. The plane was being flown from the cockpit. The fatal turn from normal flight to presumed disaster happened between 1:01 a.m. when the plane reached an altitude of 34,450 feet, and at 1:21 a.m. when it disappeared from the secondary radar. During these 20 fateful minutes, the plane's transponder automatically sent flight status messages to the airline's maintenance department. They knew parameters like fuel level, altitude, speed, and geographic position. Equipment anomalies are also recorded if something goes wrong. The satellite communication system on the plane was still operational at the time, so it's unlikely that both pilots acted together in trying to crash the plane. It's more likely that by the time the plane disappeared from the secondary radar, one of the pilots was incapacitated, either dead or locked out of the cockpit. Further investigation revealed that someone disabled the autopilot, as the sharp turn to the southwest was clearly made manually. Additionally, it seems that the person flying the plane intentionally depressurized it and significantly reduced the electrical power. The reason for these actions remains still unclear, but their consequences were temporary disruptions in satellite communication. Most likely, the person who did this was well aware of all the steps. After analyzing the technical data, it was time to look closely at the pilot's actions. Could it be that the captain or first officer took control, being the only player in the field? This idea, while shocking, is not unprecedented. Similar incidents occurred long ago. For example, in 1997, the captain of the Singapore Airlines Flight Silk Air allegedly turned off the recorders on a Boeing 737 before deliberately crashing into a river at high speed. In 1999, the first officer of Egypt Air Flight 990 deliberately brought the plane down into the sea near Long Island, taking the lives of everyone on board. Moreover, just a month before the Malaysian incident, the captain of the flight TM470 of Mozambique Airlines got rid of the co-pilot by locking the door when he stepped out and committed suicide, nosediving the plane towards the ground, doing nothing until the crash, which also killed everyone. Another notorious example is the Germanwings Airbus, which crashed into the Alps in 2015, killing all passengers and crew. In this case, the first officer, Andreas Lubitz, did the same thing, locking the cockpit door from the inside while the captain was using the restroom, then crashing into a mountain. The investigation revealed that all these individuals were suffering from severe mental health issues. The German pilot Lubitz was in depression and had actually researched the disappearance of the MH370 a year earlier. Experts thoroughly examined the first officer's persona of his life and concluded the possibility of his involvement in the incident was hard to accept. In summary, everything about his life was great. Moreover, he wasn't just a pilot for the German budget airline. On the contrary, he flew a Grand Boeing 777 in a country where the national airline and its pilots enjoyed great respect. Amid rising concerns, Captain Zahari's figure became under scrutiny, with official reports describing him as a model pilot and a family man. Although while the family was grieving, Captain Zahari's private life required more thorough investigation, but subsequent findings were insufficient. Assessments of Zahari's ability to cope with work pressure were positive, and there were no prior instances of inappropriate behavior. His daily interactions and family circumstances also raised no suspicion or conflict. Then, the experts checked the surveillance camera footage. Captain Zahari's behavior on the day of the flight, as well in the 3 previous flights, showed psychological stability and an impeccable appearance, with no changes in his usual facial expressions and gestures. Interestingly, the official reports seemed to diverge or contradict the real information obtained about Zahari. They contained clear hints that were ignored. Captain Zahari's life was actually a picture of emptiness and loneliness. After his wife left, he found himself in isolation, spending long hours alone and eagerly awaiting the next flights. He had aspirations towards a married woman and also tried to start relationships with 2 young models. Zahari's life had been going through a deep transformation as he drifted far from his once stable and secure existence. Experts diagnosed signs of clinical depression. Another remarkable discovery was made when they examined the flight simulator scenarios he played at home. The FBI identified a flight path similar to the deviation of the MH370. Curiously, the Malaysian investigators almost dismissed this crucial evidence, despite the obvious potential. The following theory is based on reports of the relatives of the victims. Members of 19 families of missing passengers claimed that they had a signal from their loved ones on their mobile phones for 4 days after the supposed crash. You have to admit that there are many people sharing similar information. Here's one particular striking example. One passenger's family member demonstrated on Chinese television that he could still call his missing brother. He called live on air, and although there was no answer, the sound of a long ringing tone was real. Telecommunications expert Paul Franks supported this theory, confirming the fact that if the plane had really crashed into the ocean, the phones would not have continued working and ringing for such a prolonged period. When phones submerge in water, especially seawater, it stops functioning entirely. These facts cast doubt on the presumed crash of the plane. Renowned historian Norman Davies put forth another idea. He suggests that cyber pirates might have remotely controlled the plane and taken it to a location of their choosing. Allegedly, they used technology designed to prevent a repeat of the 9/11 terror attacks. It allowed for remote control of the planes from the ground. Specifically, he mentions the Boeing Honeywell uninterrupted power supply. Let's call it the remote autopilot, as detailed in Davies' book. The existence of such technology conjures up a chilling scenario. Davy believed that the plane may have been carrying secret materials or personnel to Beijing, and other entities were interested in the flight. In other words, there were more potential hackers than one. Since definitive answers had not yet been provided, Davey considers it reasonable to engage in speculation. In his view, the remote hijacking of the plane by a hacker led the aircraft to a U.S. naval base in Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. In any case, someone took control of the plane to prevent it from reaching its destination. In addition to the crew, there were many passengers on board, but what if one of them boarded the plane intending to hijack it and sneak on unnoticed? When special services delved into the flight's manifesto, they discovered a mysterious addition. First, a mysterious cargo weighing 200 pounds was discovered in the flight's declaration by French investigators. The press also jumped in on it. A French newspaper published a story about the secret nature of the flight due to the mysterious container. Further investigation revealed that an unidentified 200-pound load had been secretly added to the flight's manifest. After takeoff in particular, for unclear reasons, an overload occurred on board beyond permissible limits. Let's emphasize that it was extremely difficult to extract any information about the oddities surrounding this flight. Investigators faced obstacles at every turn. So, in summary, there were deviations from normal procedures everywhere, switched off communication, and deliberate course of deviation. The captain's troubled personal life, storage cargo, and unconfirmed identities of passengers. Aviation safety expert Tim Termini highlights the priority of the hijacking theory, with numerous factors supporting it. Based on these combined data, 4 possible scenarios emerge. The hijacking could have been carried out by a crew member, a passenger, a stowaway, or even through a remote electronic systems takeover of the plane. Another hypothesis suggests that the plane was shot down during joint military exercises between Thailand and the US. In the South China Sea, suspiciously, the timing coincided with the plane's disappearance. The idea that this is a misunderstanding of human error that may have caused the event is quite tragic. Former French airline director Marc Dugain claimed that he had seen satellite images of an unidentified aircraft in the region, also saying that he had received threats urging him to abandon his theory. Another theory is that the MH370 was unintentionally attacked by a country's air force, as they mistook it for a hostile or suspicious plane, and this confusion may have arisen due to the plane's deviation of the planned course. British writer Nigel Cawthorne even suggested that American fighters may have shot down the plane, fearing that it was heading towards the military base at Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. More elaborate theories suggest that the plane's crash was part of a cover-up operation organized by state actors for political or military reasons. Of course, private theories face harsh criticism as they simply lack sufficient evidence. Proving the presence of missiles or fighter jets near the MH370 is extremely difficult for a private individual. The hypothesis that government special services intended to shoot down the plane arose from alleged satellite images, but the anonymous threats were not confirmed by official sources. Moreover, shooting down a civilian plane and then organizing a cover-up of all the facts requires significant coordination, authority, and involves serious legal consequences. A conspiracy of this scale without any leaks or information seems highly improbable. We want to ask you, since your opinion is the most unbiased, I'm sure you weren't left with an indifferent story. Which theory about the disappearance of the flight did you seem most plausible? I would be glad if you shared everything in the comments below. This episode has come to an end. If you want to see more videos of our top releases, hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to the Top Facts channel. Thanks for watching.